You put on a song, and something in you shifts right away. Your shoulders drop. Your breathing slows. Your heart rate adjusts to the tempo without you deciding anything. That response happens in under 200 milliseconds, faster than a blink. Before the rational part of your brain has processed a single lyric, 5 separate brain regions are already firing. That's not a coincidence or a quirk of modern neuroscience. It is what 40,000 years of evolution built into you. And it started with a hole drilled through a bird bone in a cave in southern Germany. In 2008, archaeologist Nicholas Conard at the University of Tübingen pulled something out of the sediment at a site called Hohle Fels, a bone. 5 holes, carefully spaced. The wing bone of a griffon vulture. The flute was 40,000 years old. Conard published the find in Nature magazine that same year. The holes were cut at precise intervals corresponding to musical intervals still in use today. Whoever made that instrument understood pitch. They understood that some notes feel resolved and others don't. That knowledge takes practice. It requires a culture where music existed long enough for someone to get skilled at it. Hohle Fels was not alone. A second cave nearby, Vogelherde, produced 2 more flutes from the same period. Different makers, same musical logic. 30 miles apart, same era, same understanding of how sound works. And then there's the older find. In 1995, a cave bear femur with 4 holes was excavated at Divje Babe in Slovenia. Researchers dated it to between 50,000 and 60,000 years ago. The species that made it, if it was deliberately made, was Neanderthal. That debate is still running. Some researchers argue the holes were made by carnivore teeth. Others point out the spacing is too precise for tooth marks. What both sides agree on: musical instruments in Europe predate the arrival of modern humans in Europe. Something was happening around those fires that counted as music long before anyone wrote a sentence. Now, some of you are thinking, a bone with holes could be anything. Fair point. So here's where it gets harder to argue with. In 2009, Thomas Fritz at the Max Planck Institute traveled to northern Cameroon to find the Mafa people, a group with no exposure to Western music. He played them recordings of Western classical pieces written to sound happy, sad, and fearful. The Mafa had no cultural overlap with these pieces, no shared history, no shared musical tradition. They identified happy, sad, and fearful music at rates significantly above chance. A lullaby sounds like a lullaby in Finnish, in Mongolian, in Peruvian Quechua. In 1871, Charles Darwin wrote something in The Descent of Man that most people have never read. He argued that musical ability came before spoken language in human evolution. Before language, tens of thousands of years before. Darwin had no brain scans. He had observations of birds, infants, and his own response to music. It took neuroscience a century to catch up. Daniel Levitin, who spent years studying the neural origins of music at McGill University, found that musical processing draws on brain structures that predate the language centers by millions of years. Language lives in the prefrontal cortex and Broca's area. These evolved relatively recently in our lineage. Music activates the cerebellum, the amygdala, the nucleus accumbens, and the brainstem simultaneously. The cerebellum processes rhythm. It predates mammals. Fish have cerebellums. When your foot taps to a beat before you realize your foot is tapping, that is your cerebellum operating on its own timeline. The amygdala processes emotional response to music using the same circuitry it uses for threat detection. When a piece of music gives you chills, your amygdala is firing the same signal it fires when something moves in the dark. Iain Morley at Oxford spent years building the argument that music predates complex syntax in human communication. His case: rhythm and melody require less cognitive overhead than grammar. A group of people can synchronize musically before they can negotiate verbally. Music was the first shared signal precisely because the brain could produce it and read it before language circuits were fully online. The body synchronized first. The words came after. Robin Dunbar at Oxford has spent decades studying what holds human groups together beyond the immediate family. His answer? The social brain hypothesis. Humans need to maintain stable bonds with around 150 people to survive. Primates do this through grooming, physical touch, one pair at a time. It builds trust, it releases endorphins, and it does not scale past a group of about 50. Music lets a group of 200 bond simultaneously. And in 2012, Dunbar ran an experiment measuring pain thresholds before and after singing together in a group. Singing together raised pain thresholds by 15% compared to sitting together without music. The cause? Synchronized music triggers the same endorphin release as physical contact. Your body treats a group singing session the way a much older part of your brain categorized physical bonding, as trust building, as safety. That is why strangers at a concert feel connected after 90 minutes. That is why every military in history has used marching songs. That is why every culture on Earth developed music before it developed writing. Music was a technology for manufacturing trust fast enough to survive with people you had just met. In 2015, researchers at McMaster University found that infants bounced in synchrony with music showed significantly higher cooperative behavior afterward than infants bounced out of sync. The infants had no language. They had no cultural rules. The rhythm alone rewired the cooperative impulse before the brain had vocabulary for cooperation. Stefan Kolsch spent 20 years scanning human brains while people listened to music at the Max Planck Institute. He found that music reaches the emotional centers of the brain through a pathway that is faster than the reasoning pathway. Before you have an opinion about a song, your body already has one. Kolsch's 2014 study showed that music activates the nucleus accumbens, the same reward circuit that responds to food and physical pleasure. When a song gives you chills, your brain releases dopamine in two separate waves, once in anticipation of the peak moment, once when it arrives. Your brain is predicting the music and rewarding itself for getting the prediction right. This is a cycle. It's why you replay the same song, not for the song itself, but for the prediction and the reward that follows it. Peter Janata at UC Davis identified the specific brain region where music and autobiographical memory converge, the medial prefrontal cortex. It is one of the last regions damaged by Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's patients who cannot recognize their children's faces will still move to music from 60 years ago. They will recall every lyric to a song from their 20s when they cannot recall what they had for breakfast. The music sits in brain structures so old that the disease reaches them last. Darwin published his argument in 1871. Levitin confirmed it in 2006. Kolsch documented the mechanism in 2014. In 2009, Janata pinpointed exactly which brain region this happens in. 4 separate research programs across 150 years arriving at the same conclusion. Music is not a cultural decoration that humans invented after they got comfortable. It came first. It built the neural infrastructure that language later ran on. The person in the Hohle Fels cave 40,000 years ago, carving those 5 holes, was not making entertainment. They were maintaining the social technology that kept their group alive through the winter. Every human group ever studied by anthropologists has music. Every single one. No exceptions across 400 documented cultures. Language has exceptions. Religion has exceptions. Trade has exceptions. Music does not. Across those 400 cultures, lullabies are always soft and repetitive. Dance songs are always rhythmically driving. Healing ceremonies almost always involve sustained drone tones. These patterns did not travel by ship or trade route. They emerged independently on every populated continent, because they were built into the hardware, not the software. Right now, you have access to approximately 100 million songs. Any of them, anytime, in under 3 seconds. And the most common use case is putting something on to feel less alone, or to get through a task that feels impossible, or to process something that happened that you don't have words for yet. You are using a 40,000-year-old social bonding tool to do in your apartment what it was built to do around a fire. The context changed, the wiring did not. 40,000 years ago, someone spent hours carving a bone so that air moving through 5 holes would create a specific emotional response in other people. They succeeded. You're still reacting exactly the way they intended.